We're going to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's have a moment of silence.
Lots of luck.
Thank you. We get a roll call, please. Oops, got it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Spellich.
Present.
Councilmember McMahon.
Here.
Councilmember Friedel.
Here.
Councilmember Charno.
Here.
Councilmember Magazine.
Here.
Councilmember Grzybowski. Here.
Thank you. We will start with our reports from the mayors, council members, and the town manager. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Couple things. One is, as you're aware, tonight is the first night that we're piloting Zoom so that we can allow citizens to participate in the meeting. As the agenda, it's been printed. It has the instructions on how residents can participate. So we'll be, I think it's sometime later in the meeting, we'll be seeing how that's working. Also wanted to let you know, as you're aware, at the end of December, just after the Christmas holiday, the president signed into law the COVID Stimulus Act that was passed by Congress. The bill provides for stimulus checks of $600 for individuals making less than $75,000 and $1,200 for married couples making less than $150,000. Additionally, unemployed individuals may qualify for an additional $300 in weekly unemployment benefits. The other thing that's really important about this is that they have renewed the Paycheck Protection Program, which makes an additional $284 billion available. The previous program, they've gone ahead and corrected the law that made those loans more forgivable. Before they were, there was some question if they were forgivable if the expenses were certain types of expenses. Also, publicly traded companies are no longer able to qualify for this. And the most important thing here, a lot of the nonprofit organizations, 501c3s, were able to qualify previously. So a lot of charitable organizations, churches, were able to qualify. Now 501c6, which would be like chamber organizations and other types of organizations that were not able to get in on the previous Paycheck Protection Program, can apply for that. And the way it works for like hotels and restaurants is that about 3.5 times their monthly payroll they are eligible to apply. Basically, businesses that have fewer than 300 employees and have 25% drop in sales from the last year are eligible to apply for this second loan program. Also, as part of this, there was an additional $20 billion allocated for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Companies that receive grant funding as part of this application no longer have to deduct these funds from the forgivable amount. And then finally, without going into a lot of details, funding for arts venues will also be provided grants administered by the Small Business Administration. So.
Thank you, Grady. That's good to know. Anybody else have any reports from their 2 weeks? Last 2 weeks? Item 5A, which was the active transportation plan, is going to be postponed due to some technical issues with our Zooms. And item 7F is postponed as well. I wanted to start out by mentioning we do have a lot of comment cards for a couple of items tonight. So Liz was going to be reading the names and the positions when we get to some of those items. The council has hard copies right here. They'll be in the public record. As Grady said, this is our first meeting using Zoom. When we get to the items, I'm going to ask Liz if someone wants to speak on them or if she has any other cards, and that's when she can let us know. If you do wish to speak during the meeting, when we get to that item on the agenda, please hit that raise hand button on the Zoom so then Liz can call your name when it's your turn on that item. I also wanted to point out, because there was some question that governments and businesses and schools and all organizations and churches have been successfully conducting their meetings virtually for many months now. And this process was cleared long ago by state legal authorities for public meetings. And please be patient, we'll get through this, and I know that we'll be able to be successful as well. The first actual item is a proclamation, which is Speak Up, Stand Up, Save a Life Month. I wanted to thank former Councilwoman Sherry LaCrone for bringing this to our attention. We still plan to have a community meeting that we were talking about with her and Mike about teen suicide and other issues that she was involved, and Councilman Charno and staff, and they put a lot of work already into this, so we're hoping to see that come into fruition. So I'll just read this. It's whereas the Speak Up, Stand Up, Save a Life movement presents an ideal opportunity to help bridge the gap between young people, our local community, government, and law enforcement in a positive way, whereas our local schools are facing preventable suicides and tragedies that may include warning signs in person or online, but bystanders or friends remain silent among threats or cries for help. And whereas our young people can be empowered to report concerning posts or comments to school representatives or law enforcement, and adults can receive training to help spread the message it's okay to care enough to speak up, stand up, and save a life. And whereas more than 4,500 Arizona students from 157 public, charter, private, and tribal schools have learned the message and created student-led impact projects in their schools and communities that have impacted over 400,000 youth in the state of Arizona. So therefore, I, Ginny Dickey, Mayor of Fountain Hills, do hereby proclaim January 2021 as Speak Up, Stand Up, Save a Life, and that Arizona schools, students, parents, educators, police departments, community organizations are encouraged to coordinate a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our community safer and promote a healthy environment for all children and adolescents. So thank you very much. Again, Sherry, wherever you are, for giving us that information. Our next item, let's see, schedule appearances, that's out. So call to the public, these are for items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anything? No. Okay, thank you. Next is our consent agenda. Can I get a motion for that, please?
Move approval.
In a second,
I'll
please?
second.
Thank you. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 That passes. Thank you. Now, our first item is a public hearing. I'll call this to order. Grady?
I'll go ahead and have our Development Services Director, Mr. Wesley, go ahead and present this. This is, as you recall, came before you previously, but this is more or less the enabling portion of what you heard previously. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wesley.
Mayor and council,
And by the
good
way,
evening.
if I may interrupt, do you have the ability, Liz, to turn up the volume in here? Because those of us on this side of the room, can we get it maybe from Mike Chickarone from the control room? The volume of the audio, because we're getting drowned out. I can't even hear myself over on this side. Yeah. So we'll just wait a moment before. So it sounds like thank you. Thanks, Mike. So we'll go ahead and have Mr. Wesley go give his presentation.
Okay, Mayor and council, we are talking about the rezone of Plat 208 area just north here along Avenue of the Fountains. You recall back in September, the council reviewed and approved a new chapter to our zoning ordinance, chapter 26, the, I always get the name wrong, Planned Shopping Plaza Overlay District. This was originally in the zoning ordinance back in 1992, but got lost in subsequent updates to the code. We've acted over the last 20 plus years as if it were still in the code, but finally realized it really wasn't. And so we brought that back, and council did approve adding the overlay district to the code back in September. The next step in that is to actually apply it to ground. So that's what we're here about tonight, is the rezoning of the area shown here on the map between Palisades and and Avenue of the Fountains between Saguaro and La Montana. And it would then, by approving this rezoning, we'll put those modifications to the base zone in place that allow for the 100% lot coverage, the zero setbacks, the common parking. If this overlay is not approved, then the property in this area would just be subject to the existing underlying zoning, which is primarily C2 and some C3. It would not be able to then, if we have any redevelopment or new development, the property would have to meet those standards, which again would not allow the same development pattern we see in this area. So staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission are recommending approval of this rezoning to apply this overlay.
Thank you very much, John. Does anybody have any questions? You know, we talked about this quite a bit at the other meeting, so I think we're in pretty good shape. If there are no questions, if somebody would like to make a motion? It's on page 100.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm just going to read it. Approve, oh, I'm sorry. No, that's okay. Move approval. We have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I have the wrong page, so it passed. Thank you. Let's see, our next item is the vacation rentals. Grady?
Mayor and council, you recall that, that we've had issues in the past with vacation rentals, short-term rentals. One of the tools that the legislature granted municipalities recently was the ability for us to have a rental registration to be able to help kind of track the owners of the properties. And when we have issues that are reported to us by residents, we have the ability to contact them and ask that they go ahead and take appropriate measures and steps to correct their issues. I'll turn this over to Mr. Wesley, who has worked very diligently in trying to get this before you tonight. So, Mr. Wesley.
Yes, Mayor and Council. I was also working diligently trying to get this PowerPoint up, but I can't get this one to go away. So I will do this without the PowerPoint, I believe. But there's not too much to it. Mr. Miller's already pretty much hit the essence of it. State statutes limit our ability to regulate short-term and vacation rentals in the town. Some legislation that was passed, I believe, in the last session does give us a little bit of opportunity to provide some minimal regulations with regard to these. There certainly are well accepted these days vacation option. There are a number of these in town, and as the popularity has grown, some of the side effects have also grown with some of the neighbors when sometimes people renting these properties have had loud parties and abused the ability in a single-family neighborhood to operate these facilities. So this gives us, again, a little bit of opportunity to provide some regulation. So we're proposing to do Section 8-6, or Article 8-6 of the zoning of the town code to regulate these. It has several basic provisions in it, the first of which is that it, in Section 861, requires that we get a name of property owner as well as name and contact information of an emergency contact person. This would be a list that the town can maintain and also post on our website so that we can easily find out if there's an issue, who the owner is or who that emergency contact is, and get in touch with them. And property owners can do it also. If you're having a problem with the next door rental property, you know who to contact to say there's a loud party going on next door. Can you handle that? This has been used in some other communities successfully already, particularly in Scottsdale, and so we think that would be a good addition here. Then also Section 862, compliance with other laws. So basically just reiterating their requirement, anybody who operates one of these facilities, to comply with basic health, safety, sanitation provisions that are already in both state, local, and federal codes. And then 863 deals with some basic zoning ideas and says that the short-term rental must be in compliance with other zoning provisions, and lists some specific uses that would not be allowed, which typically wouldn't be anyway in a residential district, but commercial, industrial, banquet facilities, can't house sex offenders or be a sober living home, some of those things. So it makes it clear that these units can't provide those types of services. And you should have before you this evening also an amended ordinance that has a new Section 864 as it was reviewed, and Councilmember Mahan looked at that. Helped us see that it would be beneficial to also have a definition of what we mean by vacation and short-term rental. And so we have added that Section 864 to the final ordinance for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, John. Before I go on, is it okay that I didn't close the hearing from that other item? Does that work out okay, that we voted? Okay, thanks. Are there any questions for John about this item? Yes, Councilor Sarno?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. John, once we get the list of property owners and emergency contacts, et cetera, I mean, do we have to post them on our website, or is that just an extra step we want to do in terms of?
Mayor, Councilmember Charno, no, we wouldn't have to. There's nothing in the ordinance that requires that we do that or in state statute that requires it. It's been useful to get in other communities rather than necessarily having to involve the county sheriff's office when you've got a complaint to call the owner and see if they will just respond to it directly. But we don't have to do that.
I mean, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just curious, and I can understand if there's a huge party going on and we've had issues with that out here, but I'm just concerned about someone perhaps kind of hassling or giving a hard time to a rental owner just if they don't like them or what have you when there's nothing going on. That's my only concern. I mean, I think the town, needs that information, or that's good to have, but that was my only concern with that stuff.
I've seen this where it works very well if you don't have all that content on the website, but you can have the address located. And the residents that might suspect that a house is, not registered can look at that and then contact us to reach out to whomever has that house. So I think if we did it, we would definitely want to make sure we didn't have contact information for the residents to do that. But I think that's a good observation. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that would be a good compromise in terms of having that information, but yet, trying to avoid any potential hassles down the road.
Sure, and that's obviously, Mayor, Councilmember, that's a decision we could continue to make too. We could certainly start with that approach, and then if we see maybe there is a benefit, we can start adding it later. But yes.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions? Did we have any comment cards for this, Liz? On the short-term rental?
Yes, we actually do. And I don't know if they wanted to speak, but we did receive one comment card from Trent Heidke. I'm sorry, I didn't. And I don't know, he says he opposes, but he's opposed to vacation resident rentals. So
Okay.
I would think he would support this particular item.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. The town, of course, will be reviewing other ordinances that we have that are sort of related, like noise ordinances or business licenses. A lot of us have been asked about that. Any modifications that might assist in the implementation of this. Any recommended ordinance changes, of course, would come back to the council. So if there are no further questions, if you want to make a motion, that'd be great.
Mayor, if I just may, one last thing too. As you're aware, Mayor, and many of the council who are here are aware that the league has been very much front and center trying to push and trying to get the legislature to address this issue. And this kind of came to a kind of a peak last fall with Paradise Valley really getting into the news on some rentals there and some parties and some people that were arrested that had prior warrants for them and such. And there are some members of the legislature that appear that are serious that want to really take this whole matter up. So I'm hopeful that this legislative session will have some more relief. But again, as you pointed out, this is one of many tools that you'll probably be seeing us come back to and address.
Thank you, Grady. A motion?
I'll go ahead and move adoption of ordinance 21-03.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you so much. Our next item, looks like, John, you're still up.
I'm still here.
Grady, do you have anything?
I'm actually very excited by this item before you. The town, the last few years, has been moving in the direction of trying to automate a lot of different services and functions that we have. We have recently started going into, the agenda management is all a workflow system. We've gone to a number of other types of systems over the past few years. John's going to share with you one that we have before you, which I think in light of the pandemic, is going to be very helpful to our business community, our residents, but also allow us to be held more accountable. Not that we haven't been accountable or have made issues or mistakes, but it's going to allow us to basically be very responsive to people that submit requests for building permits and various different permits. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wesley, who has a more thorough presentation on this.
Okay, Mayor and Council, good evening again, and looking forward to discussing this with you. Let's see here. Which one's going to work here? There we go. So as Grady has said, currently we take all our applications in by paper, and it has worked for many years, but we think maybe some better ways to handle it. With the current paper process that we have, applicants can bring us new applications only when our offices are open, and so that limits their abilities to some degree. Also, with current paper applications, if you've seen some of the bigger projects and the big rolls of plans that go with those, there's a lot of paper involved in those big plans, and it's a cost to the applicant to print those, and they usually go through several reviews, so it can be quite expensive. They can only get comments and speak to staff and get feedback, again, only when we are open and they can speak with us. And also with the current system, paper copy comes in, one reviewer looks at it and passes it to the next and the next and the next till it gets done. And there's no multiple reviews that go on at the same time. As Mr. Miller mentioned, when we were striving to work remotely last spring and this summer, it kind of highlighted the issues with the process we currently have and our limitation of only doing things on paper. And so while we had thought this was something we were going to approach maybe next year, we decided it was time to go ahead and do it now because of these types of concerns. And so the electronic permitting processes really solve all these problems and make the process a lot easier going forward. So to bring this to you this evening, we started by putting together requests for proposals that we sent out and solicited responses. We received 9 responses from well-qualified vendors in this field. We had a staff team that reviewed all of those. We selected our top 3 from those 9 and invited them in to do a demonstration and review more specifically of their product. And from that, we have selected the top choice, the best all-around vendor, a company called Online Solutions, doing business as Citizen Serve. And so what I have following are some slides from some of their screenshots of the product that they have, that we will have. And these are examples from other communities where they've implemented this. So just understand, we will be able to totally configure these to our needs. So their words, we can change. We can change the images. We'll be able to change all those things around. So don't be too concerned about some of those things you may see. We'll be able to change all that. Be able to have the information then that will guide applicants through the process to make their applications. And we know that certainly when we start using this, it'll be new for us, it'll be new for our applicants, and we will be ready to guide them through and help get them set up to be able to use the electronic system. So here you see an example of just an online welcome screen that would come up initially, somebody thinking they may need to submit something through the system. They'll be able to pick the type of application they're making, and the examples here show licensings or permitting or development projects. I'll give some examples of things that those are for, and some links to get further information so they can understand what type of application it is that they need to submit. And then when they're ready and have registered in the system to file an application, it'll walk them through with screens to fill in information, have drop downs that they can choose from to enter the information. We will be working with the vendor and giving them examples of all of our applications that we need and working through the types of information we need for each type of application. So each one will be exactly streamlined to the information we need to be able to review and process an application. And then, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, they have the opportunity then to upload their drawings as a part of this, and any documentation they have that we will need to review. And that will come into us at the end. Then they sign off this is their application and click the submit button. At any time in that process, before they get to that submit, they have an idea now, they enter a little bit of information, they go away and come back, they can keep doing that until they get everything they need, and then they submit. If they're doing that at midnight on Saturday, that's fine. Whenever they're ready to do it, they can hit that submit button and get it to us, and it'll be in our queue. Then after that, They'll have their screen where they can go back and periodically check up and see what's happening with their application, what the status of it is. Again, if they want to do that anytime, day or night, they don't have to wait for offices to be open to be able to see where their application is in the process. On this screen, you can see this example that some folks have already begun the review. It's still pending in other areas, approved in one. So they'll be able to see that and have that up-to-date information on where their project is in the process. From the town side, again, examples of some different screens, that intake screen. So a permit tech would have a screen, something like this, showing all the different applications that have come in and where they might be in the process and what needs to be assigned, what the overall workload might be. All the different fields on here are configurable according to what we think we need. And here we see a staff permit workflow screen where they can look again and see where different projects are in the workflow, what they have to do, what others are needing to do on a project. Inspector, because inspectors will be able to use this in the office and in the field. It's one of the benefits that we'll have, that they will be able to take a mobile device out in the field as they do an inspection, and they can record their inspection results in the field, and those can become immediately available then to the contractor. They can send them emails, they can take pictures to explain, what issues there might be. This is what the actual tablet might look like as they would use that in the field. They'd be able to also access the documents themselves if they've got questions about what actually got approved and so forth while they're out in the field. The system also allows for routing. If we need that, inspector comes in, has a list of 10 inspections due the day, you can use the system to plot out a route. What's your most efficient route then to get from inspection to inspection? So those things will be very helpful to the staff and help our workflow move along much better, we believe. And so with this software specifically, with CitizenServe, the basic contract for them to configure their product for us to use, $58,000. We anticipate it's taking about 6 to 8 months for us to go through and get things configured and ready for citizens to use. We'll also mention this is not just for building permits, we'll also use it on the zoning side for all of our site plans and rezones and plats. It'll cover all the different types of applications that we bring in and process. Then there'll be an annual subscription of $27,000 for ongoing maintenance and working with the system, all their upgrades. They're regularly providing upgrades to the system. Compared to the others that we talked to, most of them had some type of inflator fee that went with their system. CitizenServe does not. Once you lock in at a rate, that is your rate going forward. So that should hold true for ongoing use of the system. CitizenServe has an in-house plan review module in it. So when the plans come in, the staff can look at those and mark them up. We found a deficiency in their in-house version in that it doesn't let you layer one submittal over another to easily compare, make sure you've caught all the changes that have come in. And we think that's a challenge and a shortcoming that could cause problems and slow down our review if you can't immediately do that. So there is other software out there that a lot of communities do use called Bluebeam. So we're proposing to also then contract with Bluebeam for their plan review module. And those work well together. They've done this before, and so that's not a big hurdle. You can see the cost up front and ongoing subscription for Bluebeam. CitizenServe tells us that they hope in the future to upgrade their system, so it will do that versioning, and once they do, then we can drop the Bluebeam. But for now, we think this will be very beneficial just for the staff, though, that are actually doing the permit review. It's not for all the staff that will be using CitizenServe. Then also to implement this, there's a little bit of additional hardware that we'll need. We'll need some larger monitors for the staff that are doing the plan review so they can see them, and the tablets for the field inspections and those types of things. We estimate the total cost for those hardware upgrades to be about $6,500. So your proposal for you this evening is approval of the contract and the budget transfers to let us move forward with this.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Councilman?
How long have they been in existence, John?
Oh, you'd ask me a question like that. It's been a while since I've had to think about that. They have been around, it's been a while. It's been more than 10 years.
Okay.
They are Arizona-based. Their headquarters is in Tempe, and so that was helpful too. They've got several hundred local governments that use their system.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. John, let's say we go for this and in the initial startup, I know you're getting additional hardware for staff, et cetera. If a contractor, somebody just, comes up to the second floor and wants to start the permit process, are we going to then send them home, or are we going to hand them a tablet, or do we have a kiosk up there, or what? Do you see any issues there initially? Or?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Charno, that's a good question, and one that we've been starting to talk about and we'll continue to work through. But particularly somebody starting out, particularly some of our smaller customers doing home projects or whatever, we'll definitely help them through that system of setting up their account, and if necessary, scanning their small documents themselves to get them started in the system. And that type of thing, larger contracts with the big rolls and that kind of thing, we'll have to, they'll have to go back and submit theirs electronic. Theirs are usually electronic to begin with, and they printed them out to bring them to us. But yes, we will definitely be set up to help the customers get started in the system, get their initial user accounts set up.
Okay, yeah, sounds like you thought through that process, so thank you.
Mayor, if I may, too, it's a very good question. We're probably one of the last of the, I don't want to say major cities, but of all the cities and towns in the valley that are larger than us, a lot of them are all they've been using this for many, many years. We're one of the last that haven't done this. So this is a really good thing, and it's a great opportunity for these contractors that go to these different cities that are doing that. This also provides them the ability 24/7 to actually submit. Now, we're not reviewing 24/7, but at least really Monday through Sunday, they can go ahead and submit, and then we can get to it, on a typical workday. So that's the beauty of this, is that this is opening up this level of service 24/7 to the community and to our contractors.
And Mr. Miller, if I can add on to that too a little bit, just the average citizen who's not a contractor will also be able to set up accounts, and will allow them, if they want, to come in and look at some basic data about the numbers of permits that we're issuing and what types of permits and some of that type of information too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. John, is there a backup plan as far as with every electronic input that there will also be a paper file that'll go with this? And the reason I ask is I recently implemented on my state job a case management system, and when it goes well, it goes really well. And when it goes bad, it goes really bad. And there's also, I'm sure you're aware of state archive records for governments that have to archive their records for so many years, litigation and everything. So what's the plan for that?
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, as we worked with all the vendors, one of the things that we looked at very closely was their history and their standards for how they back up material, their down times and so forth they have. And again, I probably should have brought the proposal down so I could look back at the numbers. It's been a while. But they were very redundant in their backups of systems and their downtimes. And as we talked to other communities that have implemented the system, they haven't experienced any difficulties with downtimes where they couldn't access their material. So we feel real confident about that. We haven't talked specifically about how this ties into state archives, but all these applications can be maintained as long as necessary.
I didn't know about all the rules pertaining to, archives and everything, so we would want to consult with the town attorney just to make sure, because, you definitely don't want to be caught in a position where we don't have these records available.
Correct.
So, thank you.
And I believe our town clerk is the official records keeper for the town. It's up on the state law relating to records. John, on these, I know on the personnel side, the Vice Mayor brings up a really good point. When we have, we're using a workflow system called NeoGov, so applicants apply online. And when they are hired, basically, their application from that and their, what we call a personnel action form are printed from that program, and then goes into their personnel file. And of course, we have a retention schedule that's required by state to maintain those. Are we keeping a file after, say, a project is done or whatever, that you take the building permit and just maybe a hard copy of whatever the application was and you just stick that in there? Or maybe it's a CD-ROM or whatever? Or is there any plans for that? Or right now, are you looking at PDFs? And that's, right now I understand that PDFs, Adobe Acrobat files are considered an okay standard as well.
Mayor, Mr. Miller, we haven't really discussed that issue at this point, so it is something we'll have to look at as we move
I
forward.
think it's something, based on what's being raised, would be something we need to look at, though.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sounds like a lot of customer service improvement there and also efficiency for the staff. So if you, were there any cards on this? No? Okay. If anybody would like to make a motion? That's on page 100. Just somebody had the right one.
I move to approve contract 2021-028 with Online Solutions LLC in the amount of $58,000 and the associated budget transfers in the amount of $66,400 for license fees, Citizen Serve, and Bluebeam, and $6,500 for hardware.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It passes. Next, we are talking about Toro Multi-Pro sprayers. Katie?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the item before you is a couple items that are in the vehicle replacement program to replace. Our Public Works Director and working with our Park Superintendent is eager to get these items purchased. I'll turn it over to Mr. Weldy, our Public Works Director, who will give you a briefing on this particular item.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, this is my first opportunity to appear in front of the newly elected body that's seated. Welcome and Happy New Year to all of you. As we work through the years, we planned in 5, 10, 15, and 20-year horizons. This particular contract that we are asking you to consider tonight is in that horizon to continue to maintain and provide working good equipment for the community services through their Parks Division. In this particular case, one of the pieces of equipment that we are asking to be replaced ahead of time was involved in one of the storm events at Golden Eagle Park and was badly damaged. In fact, it was submerged in water. We were able to get the manufacturer's representative out. They worked on it, they brought it back to life and actually took it from the town's property, worked on it at their facilities, brought it back, and we've been using it since. The bottom line is this particular unit is exceptionally tired and not long for use for the department. And so what we are here tonight to ask for is permission to, one, replace that one just slightly earlier. It's scheduled to be replaced in the next fiscal year. And two, purchase a spraying apparatus that will attach to a piece of equipment that we already own that allows for turf maintenance. A little bit more explanation in regards to the funding. The funding is currently slated for a tenant sweeper. For those of you that may or may not frequent Golden Eagle Park or occasionally Fountain Park, you'll see this very small street sweeper that is being used. In this case, and certainly Kevin can speak to this better than I can, but my understanding with conversations is that it's really not adequate for what they need. And so he is the one, through me, asking for your permission to use money to purchase needed equipment that needs to be replaced versus equipment that is not necessarily functional at this time, which doesn't mean we won't return at a later date and ask to purchase something functioning in regards to street sweeping.
Sat down and read the book. And you write, I read it eagerly, but barely finished it. And you almost didn't make the movie because you didn't really like it.
With that, if you have any questions of myself or Park Superintendent Kevin Snipes, we will be glad to provide the information to the best of our ability.
Thank you. Any questions? Sharon, Councilwoman?
It's okay. Mine isn't really a question, but you mentioned that the mower was scheduled to be replaced next fiscal year. I just feel like for everybody viewing, we need to know that means July, not 2022, but this July is when it was scheduled to be replaced, correct?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, you are correct. The fiscal year actually starts in July, so we're roughly about 6 months out from the end of this year, beginning of a new year.
Thanks. I get a lot of questions after these kinds of things because we talk like we know everybody knows what we mean, and there's sometimes some missings there.
Thank you, council member. Also, I wanted to also explain, so the funding for this is coming out of the vehicle replacement fund. It seems strange that this is vehicles, but they're smaller utilitarian type vehicles. And what we do is we identify on the front end the useful life of this type of equipment, and we go ahead and try to recover the replacement costs. We try to recover the replacement costs over the life of that. So each year, you'll see in the budget process that we are setting aside money for this equipment over time so that when it is due to be replaced, in this case, it's 6 months early. Justin, was this actually slightly beyond its useful life that we kept it, or was it early before it's?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Miller, after having extensive discussion with Park Superintendent Kevin Snipes, we discovered that the original end of life for this type of equipment was too far out. So we will be coming forward in the future and asking that these types of equipment be moved back from the, say, 15 or 10 year back to the 5 to 7 year mark to ensure that we have the ability to maintain the parks and obviously any other appurtenances there too that are necessary.
So the only point I'm trying to make is that we do plan for these future replacements, and we do set aside money for it so that we don't get hit with a big number all at one time.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, this one is beyond its useful life.
Well, the drowning and stuff, so. Did we have any speaker cards for this? This is the,
Well, I do have one hand up from Ted Blank, so I'm not sure if it's for this item or the next.
probably next, yeah.
That's what I'm
Okay,
assuming,
yeah.
but, okay.
So if there aren't any other questions, could I get a motion? See it?
I'll go ahead and move to approve the First Amendment to Cooperative Purchasing Agreement C 2020-17 in the amount of $53,524.56 for turf maintenance equipment.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Now we're on the bollards. Grady, do you want to start?
Yeah, just very quickly, Mayor and Council, the item before you, we've got staff, our Community Services Director, Rachel Goodwin, will be giving you a brief report on this. We also have, on the Zoom call, we also have Ted Blank. You recall about a year ago, Ted led a number of volunteers or came before the council to request permission to conduct a pilot program of painting the bollard lighting that's contained or located over at Fountain Park. The council gave permission for that. They directed staff to evaluate it and to come back at a later date with a report. That's what we're here tonight to do. Following Ms. Goodwin's report, you have on the dais a PowerPoint that is from Mr. Blank, and Mr. Blank, through his comments, he's going to give you a presentation through the Zoom of his presentation, and he'll have you follow along by page number. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Goodwin.
Great. Thank you, Grady. Mayor, Council, I really have a very brief presentation. You have quite a bit of information in front of you, and that's being shared. So my intention tonight is to offer just a bit of background from the staff perspective. I'd like to pause and thank the volunteers for their time and effort in this project. Regardless of direction, they have certainly put in a lot of time on their own. So we appreciate all of our volunteers in our community. We did bring in a sample bollard this evening. It's here in front of you if you haven't had a chance to show and tell. To give you an example of what we're seeing, you probably, Kevin, can you help? To give you an example of the condition that the bollards are in, and I'm sure Ted will share more information, but you can kind of see sort of the lower area there, the reflection areas where it has been painted. This is the condition of one from the park that was brought over today. So the feedback that we're giving as staff is that the condition is showing some wear. It does have some issues in terms of environment, in terms of the water that's out there, the heat. Therefore, the recommendation from staff indicates that if we move forward with this project, to expect this is the condition that they will probably be in within 6 months to a year. This project has been about a year, not quite a year yet, and a number of bollards have been repainted in that time. So just wanted to make sure that everyone had a view of what the staff is seeing. Now, this does not necessarily impact the function of the lighting. It does impact, however, the aesthetics of what people see when they're at our park. With that, Kevin and I are both here to answer questions and follow up on any other further information you might need following Mr. Blank's presentation.
Do you want to go ahead with Ted's presentation first, or do you want to
Well, I
ask
wanted to ask a
questions?
question about this, if I could.
Okay.
Just a very simple one. Was this one primed before it was painted?
I can't answer that. Again, this was all done for the volunteers, so that might be a great question for Mr. Blank.
Okay, I was out last night looking at them, and my understanding is the ones that were primed first, I'm sure Ted will get into this, the ones that were primed first don't look like that, but I'll let Ted follow up on that.
Once the project was approved by council, staff have been relatively hands-off, so we were not present when they did the painting, nor oversaw it, so that's why I can't answer that. I'm going to let Ted answer that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it okay then if we just have Ted walk us through this, and then if we have more questions, and I believe there's some speaker cards too. Thank you. Ted, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thanks very much. Okay. I will take you through this presentation that you have on your desks. Thank you very much for the opportunity. This is a project, this is an effort that's been going on in the volunteer community and the resident community now for almost 5 years. When the bollards were first installed, as I mentioned, we had this unintended side effect that there was a significant amount of glare reflecting from the reflective surfaces of the bollards. If you see that picture on page 1 of your presentation, that gives you an idea of what it looks like when you walk around the park. If you turn to page 2, I appreciate the opportunity to bring some of the new council members up to speed on this. I know that for some of you this is old news, but I wanted to just give you some information about the bollards without having you have to go down and lie down on the ground and look up underneath these things. If you see in the left-hand picture on page 2, it's that shiny surface on the bollard that is the cause of the glare that's reflecting up into people's eyes and making it unpleasant when you go around, when you walk the park at night. If you look underneath the bollard, you see that in each of these 4 quadrants, in 3 of the 4 quadrants, there are 4 LEDs that shine down onto the path, which is good. They also reflect off of this shiny surface up into the eyes of people walking around in the park, which is the part that we're concerned about. In 2016, several of us sat in the park and asked people who were walking in the park at night, if they felt that some sort of mitigation of the glare, whether it was a shielded or louvers or something like that, would be sufficient. And we did get 200 people to sign a petition, which we presented to the council in 2016 or 2017, asking for some sort of mitigation on the problem. If you turn to page 3, you'll see exactly in this little diagram what we're talking about. We've got the useful light illuminating the path coming out of the LEDs underneath the cap, but the red lines represent the glare that's going up into the eyes of those of us who walk the park at night. So that's detrimental to the enjoyment of the experience in the park, even though the path is nicely lit. If you turn to page 4, I want to make sure that everyone understands that our goal is not to remove all light from the park. It is a worthy goal to light the path around the park at night. We're all for lighting the path. We're just not for lighting the people. If you turn to page 5, in 2017 we did an experiment where we simply put some pieces of cardboard in on 1 or 2 of the bollards, which had been painted with this non-reflective camouflage paint. That's very sturdy, and we determined that it appeared to the eye that this was a good solution to the glare problem. So if you go to page 6, after getting council approval, we started the pilot project, and the pilot project had these 3 goals.
favorite uncles.
First, wanted to make sure that even after painting the bollards, there would be sufficient light on the sidewalk, or the same amount of light that there is today, so that the sidewalk continued to be as safe to walk on as it was before. We wanted to make sure that we got a similar amount of upward glare reduction that we saw with the painted cardboard. And we also wanted, of course, to assess the durability of the paint coating after a period of time. If you turn to page 7, you see that we definitely achieved goals 1 and 2 successfully. We measured the light on the sidewalk under painted bollards and unpainted bollards, and there was no significant difference in the amount of light on the sidewalk. So the path is still sufficiently lit. We also measured the amount of light reflecting up as glare from the painted bollards, and we saw that it was in fact reduced by over 90%. So goal number 3, if you turn to page 8, goal number 3 shows one of the bollards that showed some chipping and flaking.
Sponsor Teladoc. Teladoc offers access to.
Could I interrupt? I wonder if we can talk to somebody about.
It almost sounds like a radio or something.
Yeah, we had.
From the comfort of your home, available.
There we go. Yeah, we just need folks to mute themselves, I think. Thank you. After 5 months in the park, we noticed some flaking on one of the bollards, did some research, and determined that the reason for that flaking was because we had not primed the surface of the bollard before painting it. Even though we cleaned it with CLR and we rinsed it with distilled water and prepared it as carefully as possible, the manufacturer of the paint actually recommends priming at first. So on 4 of the bollards out of the 20, we removed the black paint, primed it, and repainted the ones that were flaking. So since August of last year, that's when we did the repainting of the 4 bollards that showed chipping. There's been no degradation, no chipping, no flaking since then. And of course, any future painting, we will include the primer coat first. It's not every bollard that seemed to be degraded like this. The 16 other bollards, although they show this coating of white hard water deposit, they did not show any flaking or chipping. So we did a pretty good job of preparing the surface, but with the primer coat, we anticipate, at least based upon this experience of almost 6 more months in the park, having no issues at all. If we go to page 9, this is a measurement showing the amount of glare reduction for the bollards with the hard water deposits on them. So we measured the amount of light being reflected off the bollards, 19 adjacent bollards, 4 that weren't painted, that were not painted, and then 10 in a row that were, and then 5 more that were not painted. And we still, even with the hard water deposit, which pretty much coats everything in the park, we have 80% reduction of the glare, and the experience of walking around the park is still one that's greatly improved by having the bollards painted. So on page 10, just to summarize, this is an effort that's really been driven by volunteers, grassroots effort from the bottom up, from people who really want to walk around in the park and enjoy what's really one of the darkest areas in town. People enjoy walking in the dark. The path is well lit. We have learned our lesson about surface preparation and primer, and the results to date have met or exceeded our expectations. The volunteers are ready to complete the painting of the remaining bollards and to do any touch-up work if we see any flaking or chipping. We are also available to remove the white coating that's on there. I did an experiment just last weekend with some CLR, and it takes about a minute to remove that white coating and get you back to the original black surface. I'm sure that when the town call goes out for volunteers to clean the statues, the volunteer team will be available to go around and take the bollards that are in the worst shape and give them a quick wipe with CLR to restore them back to their nice black surface. So we hope that the bollards last a good long time, but even if they only last 3 to 5 more years, that's still the opportunity here to give 5 years of an improved experience for people using the park after dark, and none of this is being done at any cost to the town. Paul's Ace Hardware and Sherwin-Williams have both donated all of the materials for this project, the CLR, the taping materials, the cleaning materials, and so on. So we would like to recommend that the council vote to approve the painting of the remaining bollards with primer and paint by the volunteer team, subject to the volunteers remaining available for maintenance if needed. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Ted. We really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions? Councilman?
Just a comment.
I'm sorry?
Just a comment.
Oh, sure.
Ted, this is Jerry Friedel. I just want to say thank you for the work and the labor and the number of hours and volunteers that you've lined up to get this done for the town. I think it's a testament to the volunteers in the town, and it's a great project. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have 27 volunteers currently on the list.
So, yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess my question's for Rachel. I mean, do you have any issues with this recommendation from this group or concerns or?
Well, it is contrary to the staff's recommendation. At this point, again, we're looking at the issue purely from a maintenance and public perception. I understand that there's concerns about glare and things like that. Given that this has been a 5-year process, that we've had evaluations done, we've paid for an independent evaluation to be done back in 2016 to confirm that the lights meet expectations, that they meet what was supposed to have been purchased at the time, and the direction that we were given at that time. This has been a ongoing discussion. So given the pilot project that we're at, I understand that Ted and the volunteers feel that it's met the criteria. Our criteria, of course, from the aesthetic point of view, which is what we often hear about from our users in the park, is that it doesn't look well, it doesn't present well. What are we going to do about it? And knowing that we don't have the staff capacity to maintain a repaint effort, and even if that's on an annual basis, we don't have that for 288 bollards. I understand that there's a volunteer support level ready to go, and I appreciate that. Again, we're just coming at this discussion from two different perspectives.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, and I know, I've been part of several volunteer groups out here over the years, so volunteers, it's sometimes difficult to depend on them and do it consistently, but I don't know, I guess I feel personally that the best of both worlds would be to continue allowing Ted and his group to do what they do and do them all. I mean, it's not going to happen next week, but if they do it on a consistent basis and then come back and check them, it wouldn't really cost the town any money or staff any heartburn. And I mean, that's kind of what I see personally is best moving forward. And then hopefully in 5 years or whenever, if they need replacement, well, that's, and I'm not taking sides one way or the other on the reflection issue and all that kind of stuff. I know that's obviously these lights have been a source of controversy since they went in. So I think if we can help alleviate that a little bit, and it could be an issue I see if the volunteer group kind of disbands after 2 years, or they can't get enough people to replace people that don't want to do it anymore. And so, I can see there could be staff issues down the road, but hopefully by that time, it's time to start replacing them, but anyway, that's how I feel.
Mayor and Ted Blank, this is Peggy McMahon, and I have a question. Given the ball, and it's in line with what Mike's saying, do you have a organized plan to, after you paint these, to occasionally check them if they need to be repainted? Is there any type of commitment by the whole volunteer to make sure that until the bollards are replaced, you're going to continue to maintain them if you're taking on this responsibility, and that's okay with the town to do that?
Well, it certainly is our intention to maintain them. We've been working for 5 years in in an effort to find a source of mitigation for the glare problem. One of those was to replace just the heads on the bollards with a different head that had louvers, and that turned out to be impossible because of a mismatch of the size. Then we investigated whether we could have louvers manufactured, maybe by 3D printing or using some sort of sheet metal, but that was determined not to be likely to withstand the abuse of, let's say, like the random golf disc, disc golf disc hitting them at high speed. So while I can't predict the future, I can tell you that we haven't given up for 5 years in trying to find a way to help the town mitigate the glare problem. And so those of us who are willing to put in probably 10 or 20 weekends to complete the project, I think that would demonstrate our commitment to, as long as we're able to keep going on the project.
Okay, and maybe I missed it, but how long do you anticipate that the paint is going to last, even primered?
I don't see any degradation on the paint. The paint essentially should last forever. Where there's 2 coats of this is called a camouflage black paint, and it's designed for people to spray paint the barrels of rifles and shotguns, so you can drag them through the woods and not I guess the animals that you're hunting don't see the glint of sunlight. So it's an extremely tough product. I'm not a hunter, but I understand that if you're dragging equipment around in the woods, it's going to be beat up pretty badly. So it's well designed, and it's designed for a lot worse. Nothing is actually touching this paint at all, so I don't anticipate there should be any reason that the paint itself would wear off for any reason.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make sure I understand the staff recommendation.
Sure.
The recommendation, as I understand it, is based upon a situation that we see in front of us on the bollard, correct?
Correct.
And I assume you've seen the ones that have been primed first.
We have, and herein lies a little bit of our sort of rock and hard place, is that they were repainted sometime, I'm thinking August, and Ted, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And then we went into overseeding, which is basically 2 months of no watering while we let the grass go dormant before we start to overseed. So I'm not, the concern that staff has is that this current repaint, this current primed version, hasn't necessarily seen the true impacts that a year-long process has seen. Again, we turned the water off sometime in early September, and it's not back on till late October, early November. So it's a good window there that there wasn't a lot of impact in terms of the water, in terms of the calcium deposits and things like that. So I'm having trouble knowing if the durability is there, only because we haven't been able to truly see that.
Yeah, I understand, but let me ask this. Let's assume, for the sake of discussion, that all the bollards get painted with a primer. What's the worst thing that can happen? Perhaps that they'd look like the one in front of us?
Probably.
What's the difference then? What have we lost?
The rest, if we didn't repaint the rest of them, they would not have the black, therefore we wouldn't.
I'm saying if we repainted all of them with a black primer, the rest of them, worst thing that could happen, if water hits it and so on, is degradation. I'm presuming it would look like the one in front of us. Is that not correct?
This one has been painted. We would have 288 versions of this versus.
Oh, that's what I asked
So
before.
let me just make this very clear. So the original finish on the inside of the fixture is what's on the outside of the fixture. It was kind of a silvery kind of color on the interior. And so what...
Painted meaning the black primer?
So you would have 288 of these.
I'm sorry.
At worst.
280 of those at worst, even if you primed all of them.
The other question I'd like to just...
Excuse me, then my question is, what's wrong with that? I mean, we haven't lost anything.
Well, arguably, if they were left alone and no paint was applied, they would be completely silver throughout, and you wouldn't see the fading and the water marking.
That's not what I'm asking. Let me see if I can
I guess I'm not
let me see if
understanding. I
Let me see if I can
Let's see
clarify.
what Grady has to say. Maybe it'll help clarify.
Well, I think we just got to the heart of that, and that is basically the ones that are unpainted right now. They came from a factory that uses a process of anodized application. So it's baked in. It's not going anywhere. It has a much longer life, in my opinion, than hand painting something like on the inside of a fixture. The other thing is that the downside, and again, we love the fact that we've got Ted identified this as an issue, and granted, we really regret that we did not buy bollards that weren't louvered, that were filtered to begin with. And he's found a solution that helps with that. The staff position just is that over time, if you get 280 of these, you're going to have this kind of look around, and you're going to have people who typically make observations and contact the staff to complain about the condition of the park, and that would complain about a crack in the sidewalk or something like this will be complaining about these bollards. That right now, if we don't paint them, we're not getting complaints from people that the condition of the bollards don't look good.
I'm having trouble.
That's true.
Are you getting complaints from the glare? And were you getting more complaints about the glare? And I don't know if Ted can weigh in on this or not, but were you getting more complaints about the glare than you were the condition of the bollards?
We were not getting complaints. After these were installed, the biggest complaints that we had about the bollards were from people that were gone for the summer, that came back, and they went from having no lights around the park to they lived across the street, and they were looking at both either the reflection of the lights on the lake, or they were looking at lights that they didn't see that were there before, or that weren't there. Ted identified what I'd say is a real issue, but it's a perceived issue. It depends on people's level of tolerance. It's only when they're made aware that there's glare. The walkers that walked there at night before this was raised as an issue, they loved having the ability to walk the park at night because they felt safer, they felt secure, they felt like they could see their walking paths and they could see where they were stepping versus not having it. So I think Ted did identify an issue that I wish, again, that at the time we spec'd these out, that we had the louvered versions that would have shielded the lights, and also gone with the Kelvin, which is a warmer light, versus the blue-white. I think these are what, 5,000 Kelvin or 5,000 K light, or 6,000.
I think they're in that range. I'm not sure. I'd have to look.
So they have that blue or white cast that most people do not feel comfortable with.
Yeah. If I could make one comment, I think we have, I mean, perception is important, and while people enjoyed seeing the light on the path, people also looked at our sample bollard that was on which we had placed the cardboard, and 195 out of the 200 people who we asked to make a choice said, you know, now that you mention it, that's much easier on the eyes. I don't think that's an unreasonable way to collect information. I mean, the human eye is extremely capable of adjusting to almost any level of glare, and while it's true that by adjusting to the glare, people still walk around the park at night, it is a better experience in what we have found talking to people in the park. It is a better experience for them by far when the glare is reduced or eliminated. If it wasn't true, then manufacturers wouldn't be making bollards with louvers on them to begin with.
Thank you. Councilman?
Yeah, I'm sorry to prolong this, and I'm sorry if I sound obtuse, but I'm still trying to understand. This bollard has not had black paint placed under it, has it?
Yes, it has.
Oh, it has. That's
This
what
is it was, and this is the current condition. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. That's
That's
what I
think
missed.
that is one of the most that is one of the worst cases of the white hard water deposit of the 20 bollards that we painted. Quite a few of the ones, even the ones we didn't touch, do not look anything like that bad.
My apologies. I didn't understand that.
Thank you.
Well, at least we cleared it up.
Sharon?
I'm going to start with Rachel. You might be able to answer the question that I have for Ted, but I'm going to start with you on this. you sent some really, one or two really good emails following up after sometime yesterday evening. And one of them went through the expected life of these lights that I don't think we've actually discussed today. They're 5 years old. Their expected life is 8 to 10 years.
Correct.
So, okay, that was one of my big things. Then the other one I have, and this isn't really a question, more of a concern, having volunteered some time myself with community services and being a volunteer my whole life, I know sometimes volunteers aren't the most reliable. So are we concerned that the project might get blown off? Or is this something we should be concerned about?
I think there's, and again, I don't want to downplay the value of what our volunteers do, because our volunteers are
I don't mean to do that at all. I know I've shown up and then I'm working a shift by myself because my cohort didn't show up.
Absolutely. And while I appreciate our volunteers, and we have hundreds in this town, they do quite a bit for us, there is that level of concern from the staff. And I'll share, because it is a manual labor activity. It's not an easy thing, right? You're coming, you're taping, you're crouching. I don't know how hot it is. I'm assuming they probably wouldn't do touch-ups in the heat of the summer, things like that. And so yes, there is, again, from the staff perspective, we're trying to consider the things that we encounter day to day. And yes, reliability and consistency is one of those factors.
Then my last question, I promise, is I think I heard Ted suggest we already hire a company that comes through once a year to clean our artwork. Did I hear him suggest that we can use them to do the 288 ballards with the same cleaning solution?
Actually, what I think, and Ted, I don't want to talk over you. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ted.
I think that is a volunteer effort as well. I remember there's a call to volunteers to come and clean some of the statuary that gets coated with the hard water deposit. And that is also a resident volunteer call. I'm not sure whether it's done yearly or every few years, but certainly when that call goes out for volunteers to come and spend a day in the park or walking around town cleaning the statues, that would be a great time for us to add to that volunteer effort. That wouldn't be the only time. Personally, every time I walk around the park, I'll be looking for any bollards that might need maintenance. But no, I don't think it's a company. I think it's a volunteer effort.
Yes, we have two things going on. We've got volunteers, and we have people, someone that we pay to do that also. And I think that you were indicating, Ted, that you would be following the lead of the people that come and do, and I know several people that do that go and clean the statues. Something that Sharon said strikes me also, which is the 8 to 10 year, which would be 2023. So I guess I'm more inclined of continuing the project, because the length of time that we'll be looking at replacement, even if that replacement is over a couple of years, isn't that far away. And I have faith that the volunteers, especially because they've done things for all these years in the past to get to this point, would be anxious to continue that. I'm going to ask Liz if you could let us know who had weighed in on this and if anybody would like to speak on it.
Okay, we had 14 comment cards come in. They were from Clyde Herdig, Karen Farkas, Donna Brinkmeyer, Andy Goss, Nora Leone, Jeff Esposito, John Broadhun, Cindy Courtier, Sherry James, Joan and David Dunham, Peggy Yeargain, Dale Noss, and Robert Wilson. And they were all in support of the volunteer program.
Thank you. So we had 14 that were in support. Do we have any other comments, Mike?
Yes, I don't know, Rachel or Grady, so are we saying with the original bollards and the anodized, we're not seeing any degradation or calcium deposits on the gray ones?
So,
I mean,
so what I'm telling you is that it's got a finish. It's like, where you have a white car and it doesn't really show a lot of like dirt or so forth. It's kind of the same concept. So the finish on the inside and then on the outside, it has this color that the staining just kind of blends in with it. So you really don't notice or observe the staining. So that's all I was just trying to get across. And then I also think anything that is factory ordered, I'm not saying that, let's go buy these now, but I'm just saying in the future when we do it right, I think that we want to also kind of go with the finish that we've had because it has shown to actually hold up to staining and things like that. They look almost as good today as they were 5 years ago, or almost, it'll be 6 years this summer when they were installed.
I mean, I can appreciate the concern among staff. I mean, looking at that one, and I mean, a lot more people walk the park during daylight hours and see it during the day. I mean, summertime, people are out there 5 in the morning, et cetera, versus nighttime walkers. I mean, I know in summer you probably get more of those as well, but obviously we don't want the bollards to look like that, the one in front of us, but I don't know. I still feel that it's worth at least pursuing initially and see how it turns out as far as keeping the volunteers going, but.
Sharon?
I just was going to say, I went by during the daytime, I don't know, the other day, and there is a significant difference between the black inserted ones and the ones that aren't. You don't notice the calcium deposits until you see the black. And then you're like, oh yeah, it's on the entire thing. Alan, you said you went by at night the other day. It's been a while since I've been by at night. What did it look like at night?
Well, last night, the ones that had been painted with the black looked perfect to me.
So at night it looked, because that's how it looked to me last time I was out at night months ago, is it looks fabulous at night, but at daytime you can see a significant difference, especially when you've got the gray one beside the black one.
I make a motion that we approve the light mitigation project and include Ted Blank's personal cell phone number for all future complaints about the bollards.
Second.
We have a motion to direct staff to conclude the pilot program.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ted.
Did you second it? Yeah. Alan did.
Thank you. Our next item,
Was it to conclude or keep it going?
to direct staff to
Yeah, we concluded, your motion was to conclude it just now, but I think what you're wanting is for this to continue.
I thought that meant finish it up. Yeah,
I said continue.
yeah,
Continue.
Okay, I thought I heard someone read exactly what was there.
yeah,
Okay,
continue. Sorry about that, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks for the clarification.
All right. Next is the cooperative purchasing agreement. Kevin? Grady?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Mayor, Council, the cooperative purchasing agreement with Precision Electric that's in front of you right now, we've been doing at $50,000 for 5-year terms and coming back to you every other year to ask for it again. So it's just hasn't been big enough. They do all of our maintenance on all of our irrigation pumps, motors, as well as the fountain pumps and motors. And it's almost a yearly occurrence that we spend 10 grand on just the fountain alone, which then puts us out of that 5 years, $50,000. So what we're trying to do is streamline this and make it so it's a bigger contract with them so that we're not having to come back to you over and over and over again. This doesn't allow us to spend any money that we don't already have in our budget. And so therefore, it's just a matter of speeding up the process and making it so that it's a more functional contract with them.
Kevin, just for clarification, this is really for the specialty electric, not all electric for the town.
Correct. Yeah, they work on just our pumps, motors. Their name is Precision Electric, but they are a pump motor specialists. They rewind the motors that we have for the fountain. They've been doing it for us for many years, And so they're known that they've done a good job for us, and so this is we're going to continue to do business with them. Why not make it so that it's easier for all of us to get it taken care of?
Thank you. Any questions for Kevin or Grady? No? Are there any speaker cards on this item? Would someone like to make a motion?
Move to approve the cooperative purchasing agreement with Precision Electric, contract number 2021-029, for $100,000, not to exceed $500,000.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Passes. Thanks, Kevin. Our last item on the regular agenda is about regarding the possible prohibition of special events in Fountain Hills. I'm going to start because, first of all, this is for discussion only. There's no vote. The agenda was not set up to allow voting or any action on this item. I know we all got a lot of emails and it was a little bit difficult to keep up, so I apologize in advance for those that I didn't get to, and probably some of us didn't, but we read them all and we read your comments, and we appreciate your participation. I'm just going to begin by saying what led me to want to bring this to council and staff and the public so that you know the input that I got and why I'm seeking input from everyone else. Mayors received an email from the Greater Phoenix Leadership Health Sector Task Force, a letter that was dated December 3rd, signed by presidents and CEOs of Banner Health, Blue Cross, Cigna, Dignity Health, Envision Physician Service, Flynn Foundation, Honor Health, Phoenix Children's Hospital, Translational Genomics Research, Tri-West Healthcare Alliance, United Healthcare, Valley Wise Health, Vitalist Health Foundation, and the Arizona Healthcare and Hospital Association. This letter included a copy of a similar one that they had sent to Dr. Kara Christ, recommending several actions. Only one of those actions that they suggested is being discussed, which is limiting larger events that are permitted by the town. The overriding reason is that these hospitals said they are at near or at capacity. So this would have no bearing on anything else, going to the stores, schools, churches, bars and restaurants, protests. It doesn't have any bearing on any of that. I just want to remind you, too, that the governor prohibited gatherings of over 50 in the state of Arizona in June, with some exceptions. So the initial letter suggested a 1-month period and then a reassessment. So on December 31st, they updated me, and I'm giving you the information that they gave me. It's been recommended that the previous guidance apply to any gathering of large groups of people for the next 2 to 3 months until there is significant movement on disseminating vaccines, especially with the hospitals at capacity and likely anticipating continued capacity through February. And then, so that was the 31st. I got updated information yesterday from the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield and from Banner Hospital. And I'm kind of putting both their emails together, but we are in very dire time now with the hospitals at 93% capacity, triage balancing now in effect. So that means that they're making choices on who to treat and that they are diverting patients. And I think that mostly has to do with like if an ambulance comes to a hospital, not like if you walk in yourself. To continue, their quotes, Maricopa County is number 3 in COVID cases behind only Los Angeles and Chicago. We are currently dealing with the Thanksgiving infections and will be dealing with Christmas and New Year infections going toward the end of January and well into February. Until we are past the holiday infections and have given vaccines to a higher percentage of Arizonans, we recommend that January through March, large gatherings be postponed. We're hopeful that by April, we will have a majority of Arizonans vaccinated and public safety restrictions will be eased. So they were, and then they were unequivocal saying after this that this action will save lives. So that's the input that I received that motivated this item. I have more to share later, but at this point, I wanted to ask council to, hopefully that you heard everything that, and was able to, because I kind of talk fast, but this is the information that I got that I'm sharing with you. So if anybody would like to start, that'd be great. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For those of you who know me, you know I speak directly, and I'm not afraid to confront hard truths. So here it goes. Number one, out of all the emails that I've received, I will tell you unequivocally, I have never met with the mayor. I did not consult with the mayor, nor did the mayor consult with me about the closing of the community center and the closing of this building for meetings. I had nothing to do with that. Residents threatened to FOIA my email. Feel free. Now on to it. Fountain Hills since 12/21, December 21st, has 83 new cases, which is a 12% increase. Scottsdale in that same amount of time had a 7% increase with 154 new cases. Phoenix had 36 new cases with a 5.8% increase. Arizona, as well as the majority of nation, has seen increased cases of COVID. In fact, per the recent news reports, Arizona is unfortunately number one. Who's number two, you may ask? California. California, who has the most restrictive measures in the nation. Who has the lowest incidence of COVID cases? Florida. Why? Or people will ask, because they have the most minimal restrictions. Lockdowns don't work. We're being asked once again to enact more restrictions to our population, prompted by a letter from a local hospitals and insurance providers. Any guess why insurance providers would be against it? Of course, save money, bottom line. Anybody that's dealt with an insurance company and a bill, they don't look out for us, they look out for themselves. This time of year has traditionally been a busy time for hospitals regardless of COVIDs. Look it up. Thanksgiving and Christmas is the number one and number two times for massive heart attacks. It's being with your family that does that. The letter itself states that they also had previously stated that while our outdoor activities are less risky, the recommendation is for both inside and outside events. This almost seems like an afterthought, as it is not supported by CDC recommendations. Why? Because there is no science to justify this action. The mayor stated that Fountain Hills had 353 total cases since the beginning of the pandemic through November 13th. The first day of the fall fair, 353 cases in 8 to 9 months. We had added 492 cases in 7 weeks for a total of 845 cases. However, what is not mentioned is that contact tracing has been done and has not shown any cases, let me repeat, 0 cases linked to the art fair. Check it out for yourself. That's from the Maricopa County Board of Health Contact Tracing Unit. What is not mentioned is the multiple holidays that have occurred in this time frame, which family gatherings play an integral part. Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, for which many people have traveled to other parts of this country and then back to Arizona. This is important because there has been 2 trace studies done recently that substantiate that overwhelmingly COVID transmissions occur inside home gatherings, not outside. Study results show that 73.84% transmission in home gatherings, 1.43% in restaurants and bars, 0.069% in religious gatherings, and 0.049% in schools. Over 99.5% of people affected with COVID recover. 94% of deaths related to COVID are from an underlying illness. This is per the CDC. The top 3, influenza, pneumonia, respiratory failure, hypertension, and diabetes. The average age of who dies is 75 years old with 2.9 underlying illnesses. The Center for Disease Control, as well as the World Health Organization, has changed their position statements over the course of 2020 regarding the efficacy of masks as protections against COVID. This is not about politics, nor is this about money. It is what is doing right for the people who call Fountain Hills home. Fountain Hills is a unique and vibrant community. It does not have the population density of Phoenix. It does not have the demographics of Scottsdale. Recently, the Concourse in the Hills Auto Show was canceled. One of the major sponsors, a local hospital, pulled their support. It is what it is at this point. This is not a contest of we won or we lost. What it is is the impact of decisions and how do we respond to them. This one decision represents a loss of approximately $250,000 in research and charity care for sick children. Of course, we must consider the incidental loss of business to the Fountain Hills community. But more importantly, we must consider the message that this gives, not just the lives impacted, but the quality of life as well. We have all read of the skyrocketing incidences of depression, suicide, and domestic abuse, and etc. We as leaders must proceed cautiously, not reactively. Our actions should be balanced with a good response based on facts, what we know, and not fear. We should focus our efforts on protecting the vulnerable, educating our populace with COVID information, disseminating up-to-date status of reports of COVID in Fountain Hills, post information regarding the vaccination progress and where those locations will be for our residents, and protecting our small businesses and our way of life. I will end with a quote from Douglas MacArthur. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. I have no interest whatsoever in closing the fair or not letting the fair happen. I have no interest in closing down the Good Guy Car Show behind Phil's on Sunday, and I have no interest in closing the senior softball tournament, which, by the way, went off 2 times with absolutely no problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anyone else? Anything to say? Yes, Jerry? Councilman?
Thank you. As our Vice Mayor mentioned, I look at this and there's several impacts. There's a health impact, which he mentioned, mental health, domestic abuse, and suicide from being locked down in a lot of these states is dramatically increased. I don't have numbers to quote it, but we've all read and heard about it. A second impact I call the vision impact. People come from all over to our art fair, to our car shows, to Phil's car show, to the softball tournaments, to the other league tournaments, to the Frisbee golf tournaments. What will that look like? They'll go elsewhere, and there's a good possibility we could lose those tournaments in the future. The third impact is economic. We've got businesses in this town, and I don't know if anybody took a pulse of those businesses to see how they're struggling. Just the impact alone from the car show and other cancellations are huge to our businesses in this town. A lot of our businesses are weak and suffering right now, and there's a further impact with that. The loss of those employees. What do we do with those employees? There's no parachute out there right now for these businesses. They need this business from the art show and the other events that are hosted in this town. Outside, I want to say that the art show was our beta test. We passed that beta test. I was down at that art show 6 times, and they followed all the protocols. We have that in place now. We know what to do. We were successful the first time, and it goes further because that tax revenue, we just voted to give every employee in this town a 3.5% raise, which we were glad to do. Our income was there. We had the money set aside for it. What happens in the future if we cancel things for 3 months, 6 months, whatever? The outside events that draw sales tax revenue to this town. We need that revenue. Again, Mayor, I don't know if this included things like the theater. I don't know what their capacity is.
I'm glad you asked me, just because you mentioned Phil's and stuff. There's anything that isn't permitted by us, it does not include. But I will mention that the governor's office does have a prohibition against gatherings of over more than 50 people.
Correct, yeah. So, again, we're living with a lot of sales tax revenue. I mean, it's important to the town. It's important to our businesses. So, again, we've been there. The chamber did an outstanding job with the art fair. I'd like to see the continuance of that and these other outdoor events. I know that the tournaments, they had safety protocols there too, above and beyond what were recommended. and we haven't had any issues with that. So I would, again, suggest that we consider these things in any decision that's made. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I guess I'll start out by saying, I've been, my former life, I was a journalist for 32 years, and it's just been so disappointing to me to see all the misinformation that's been out there the last few days. And some of the emails received, it's just like, Happy New Year? Yeah, right, But, and it's almost impossible to attack some of this misinformation out there. We're only considering this one thing, and it just totally got blown out of proportion, and it's just unfortunate because we get labeled as considering this and considering that, and that's just not what was happening. So I know my little complaint about it won't make a difference, but had to say it. And then, last time an issue like this came before us, we were talking about the November fair, and the way it worked out at the end with the motion, I ended up being a no vote, and it was primarily because there was a push by the majority for the beer garden and gatherings of that type at the fair, so I ended up voting no. But my Noon Kiwanis Club, we ended up having a concession stand down there. We kind of changed up what we sold and such, and so I was down there all 3 days working the booth and at the fair all 3 days, and I have to agree with Jerry. What I saw was, 99% compliance. They did have extra security personnel there reminding people, the few people that I saw, to put their masks on. The tables with the food area were spread out a pretty good distance, and in fact, our club also took on the responsibility of cleaning off the tables and disinfecting them as people, stopped eating and the next ones came on. So from what I saw, the fair ran really well. I know this one could be busier because the February fair is always busier, but there's going to be less artists and less people in general. And I think there is a big difference between outdoor events and indoor ones. And as has been mentioned several times already, the current spikes all around the country are because of Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't think these outdoor events are the big super spreaders, and especially the way the fair was organized. And so I just don't see the need to prohibit that one. And and then, like the mayor said, the events at Phil's and et cetera, those are not on town property, so we're not discussing those. So those are my comments.
Just briefly. The reason, fellow council members, the reason I brought that up is that was part of the emails that were sent. People sent emails asking or bringing up the fact that it was the car show, the Good Guys and other events. So that's the reason why I also addressed it.
I got copied on an email that Mayor Dickey got. I think we all got copied on it. And the writer specifically asked if Mayor Dickey had an opportunity to go visit the hospitals. I can't answer for her, but I can tell you in November, I had to fly to Virginia because my sister had an emergency situation. And I spent a lot of time in the hospital, and I've never seen a hospital so busy. I was very blessed to be able to speak to the doctors and the nursing staff and have really good conversations with them about their situation and just COVID in general. Then I come home and I try to visit a friend here locally after waiting a couple weeks from flying home. And unfortunately, I get declined because I'm merely a visitor, and this hospital was only allowing one visitor per person, and that was one visitor during the entire stay. So I didn't get to go visit my friend because of that. I have talked to a number of my personal physicians, and my husband just had a procedure yesterday, an outpatient procedure, and we got to talk to his doctor. about their feelings and mask wearing and basically debunking a lot of the emails that we received the past few days. I also wanted to mention that the 3 new people had an opportunity to attend a newly elected officials class early December. 101, one of the very first things that they mentioned to us and that is in the handbook that they gave us is your job, my job as a newly elected official is to remember that we are here to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. That being said, there are a lot of examples of things that people used to consider government overreach. Seatbelts, auto insurance requirements, driver's license and registrations. There's also issue that COVID doesn't kill that many people. Well, okay, let's talk about a small number of people. Issues, again, government got involved because of a small number of people needing handicap entrances to buildings, handicap bathrooms, sidewalks with ramps to accommodate everybody. Bicycle paths, bicycle ways on roadways have been created to accommodate a few people and not necessarily the many because of the safety and the health of the residents. And that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Let me start by saying that I wish people would stop reading social media and accepting everything they read. How about being a little bit discerning? How about asking some questions? How about emailing and texting us, council members and others, with questions that we can answer for you? Don't believe everything you read on social media. I'm reading that we're going to close down the whole town, that we're not going to allow restaurants to be open, that we're going to have curfews, and this just isn't correct, period. I want to thank people for the emails and texts. Most people were polite, except for the woman who accused us up here of all being members of the Chinese Communist Party. And I can't make that up. That's a hell of a way to get our support, let me tell you. I just wish people could be civil. And there's nothing to be gained from the vitriol. These are serious issues. They require serious thought, and they require facts, not assumptions. Let me lay out some of the facts. Some of you who wrote said we were exaggerating everything, that the government was exaggerating everything, that was part of the deep state, and so on. It reminded me of a television program that I'm old enough to remember called Who Do You Trust? I trust the CDC. I trust Johns Hopkins. I trust the doctors and nurses. I trust the hospital administrators. Many of the people that wrote to us had no facts whatsoever. It's been reported that Arizona leads the country in COVID cases. The 7-day average is the highest in the world per capita. December 31, we had 5,267 cases. January 1, we had 7,700 cases. January 3rd, we had 8,800 cases. And yesterday, we had 17,200 in Arizona. As the Vice Mayor mentioned, on the first day of the fair, there were 353 cases. 3 weeks later, there were 504. Now, let me say something about this tracing, because people are using tracing as the underlying reason why we should have a fair, because nobody got the COVID because of the fair. Frankly, I think it's ridiculous. To talk about tracing, we had thousands of people coming and going in that fair. Did we have their phone numbers? Did we have their names? What kind of tracing was done? I just don't believe for a minute that that tracing showed nobody got the COVID. And even if that's the case, who's to say they're not going to get it in the next fair? There were 353 cases in 8 months and 493 cases in 7 weeks. And how many cases go unreported? I talked to my doctor this morning. He said he's had a lot of cases from people in Fountain Hills. I'll also mention, this is not pleasant, but I spoke to the head of a mortuary who said that they had 6 to 10 people from Fountain Hills who had died. Now, did they have underlying conditions? No way to know. But as the vice mayor said, people 75 and over. Well, some of us understand that age. Pardon me? Oh. CEOs of 16 healthcare providers wrote, quote, transmission will push hospitals beyond capacity. We have situations in parts of the country, like Los Angeles, which we could have here, where people who are coming in by ambulance are not allowed to come into the hospital if they think that they're not going to live through it. So doctors, nurses, clinicians, and others have to make decisions on who lives and who dies. Have we reached that in Arizona? No, but I don't want to either. Finally, as some of you know, I participate in art fairs, and I've participated in hundreds of art fairs in Arizona. I've made many friends who are artists. Many rely on the fairs for income. I'm fortunate that I do not. I'm not insensitive or indifferent to their plight, but it's my responsibility as an elected official to give more weight to the health and safety of our citizens. Therefore, I oppose, or I should say, I support having a 50-person limit on organized events.
Councilmember Magazine, it's not your intentions to at all call into question the fact that I spoke to the Maricopa County Board of Health and the contact tracing unit, and they said that you're not questioning my statement, correct?
I'm not questioning that you heard that.
No, I was told that. I didn't hear it.
Well,
I was told that by their...
I'm not questioning that you were told that.
Okay. And then in regards to Councilmember Grzybowski's statement about, wheelchair ramps and everything like that, ADA recommendations or ADA governmental compliance issues don't affect businesses. So they don't affect the bottom line and the revenue for businesses. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I was just using that as an example of things that people may consider only affecting a small number of people as opposed to the majority. That's all I was referencing with that.
And I would guess when they first came out, they affected because everybody had to, accommodate and build them and stuff, yeah. So, now we're so used to it, but Councilwoman?
The fact of the matter is, whether we like it or not, and whether or not we're numb to it, we're in an extraordinary pandemic. It is out of control. Regardless of what numbers any of us quote, we don't even know the real numbers. We can't know the real numbers because they don't get reported. Contract tracing, you can't. People don't follow up on that. You can't do that with accuracy, unfortunately. I wish we could, because I think if you could, we would have already had mitigated a lot of the pandemic. I think we have a responsibility toward our community, the health and welfare. I think that it would be a good idea to postpone it until we get through this triple surge we're in. We're on a surge after a surge after a surge. We can't ignore that. We are the worst state in the world for pandemic right now. I mean, that is mind-numbing. I mean, it's hard to even comprehend that, in my opinion. I think that while I respect business and our community needs it, and I respect the artists and they need it, the fact of the matter is that the majority of the pandemic is being processed or transmitted by asymptomatic people, whether they're inside or outside. While everybody takes mitigating health measures, the fact of the matter is it still transmits between people. We can't keep 6 feet difference in a crowded arena like that. It's over 50 people. I mean, I know, even myself, I'm sick of sheltering in myself. And I have to be very careful and conscientious about it to not get numb to it and just say, oh, well. But the max aren't 100%. I just don't think right now, given what we're in, and given the fact that our hospitals are at capacity, because if I get it, I want to be able to go to the hospital. And I want everybody to be able to have that opportunity. But I really think that since we're in such a significant surge right now, I think we need to wait and see, and at best postpone it, because we are going to have the vaccine. And it is going to help us, because if you have the vaccine and you have the fair, and I'm not saying wait 6 months or whatever, I'm saying let's wait and see, or you wait and see, whatever you want to do, Mayor. But I just think that before you need to take everything into consideration that you have at your disposal and make an educated decision and maybe consider postponing it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Dave, I just wanted to clarify with you, so the Phoenix Children's Hospital, just to make sure you knew, they were one of the signers of the original letter, so the value or whatever, or the trustworthiness of those who sent the letters, it wasn't all just insurance or somebody that's going to benefit from it. I mean, I think Phoenix Children's Hospital and Banner and Honor and Health and all of those places that we go to and rely on signed the letter. So I don't really question their motivation. I can understand that people have questions about whether this particular event is going to do what they say it'll do, but I don't know how, talking about money or whatever, not necessarily with them or the Flynn Foundation, they signed it too. So I just wanted to, you don't have to respond, but I just want to make sure you knew that they had been a signer.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Point of clarification, I didn't doubt the veracity of hospitals signing on. What I said is, what would be the motivating factor for insurance companies to sign that letter? That's what I addressed. And I said that insurance companies, and if there's anybody on this dais that can say that they've had 100% great dealings with their insurance companies, and that insurance companies they've dealt with have never tried to get out of paying claims or anything, and that the bottom line of all insurance companies is profit, I would really like them to speak up right now. So I wasn't implying that the hospitals, yes, let's look at it this way. If Phoenix Children's Hospital would have drafted a letter to Peter Volney to have the concourse, and one person blame that event for giving them COVID, the ramifications and the bad media for Children's Phoenix Hospital would be devastating to them. So, and then if lockdowns work, we've been locked down. We were locked down. Do we remember that when we went to Bash's and Safeway and everything, it looked like a Russian grocery store? Did we forget that? We've been through lockdowns, and they don't work. And let's give the residents the respect that they know that they should not go to this event if they have pre-existing conditions or comorbidities. Don't go to the event. I just feel that when we take away their right to make a decision, if they want to go, let them go. If they don't want to go, then let them not go. But we can't have it both ways. Some of us use contact tracing, and some of us use the statistics of contact tracing, and then when it doesn't fit our narrative, then we say contact tracing is all BS. So we can't have it both ways. Yes, we're in a pandemic. We've been in this almost a year, and people are fatigued and over it. And I don't want to see one person, do not send me any emails like I got before about how you're going to stack bodies at my door of my residence, or you hope that my wife and I die of COVID because I voted for the fair. It's ridiculous and it's ignorant to even say something like that to anyone. So that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to say, Let's let the residents decide if they want to go to this. If they don't want to go to it, they don't have to go. Councilman Magazine, you don't have to have a booth there to sell your art if you don't feel like going.
And I'm not.
So it's a decision that we all make. Let's give the residents some respect and let them make a decision if they want to go or they don't want to go.
Yeah, I have a lot of trouble with the notion, and I've heard this from a lot of people who wrote to us, that, you know, if you don't like it, don't go to the fair. Okay, I want to know how many of those people are going to go to Bash's for me, or to Safeway to do the food shopping, or go to the bank, or whatever. Okay, so I don't go to the bank. I don't go to the fair. But what about the people who have COVID and may have gotten it from the fair who are around town? So it's a ridiculous statement. I'm sick of hearing from people who say, you don't like it, don't go.
I guess, Alan, what I ask you is, when you go to the bank, when you visit the supermarket, when you do all the things, do you wear a mask?
Mm-hmm.
And do you religiously practice good hand hygiene?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Not everybody does.
But you're not going to come in, you're not going to go out of your way to speak to somebody that doesn't have a mask on or to do hygiene.
We can argue this.
You're right, we could argue it all night long.
Right, and we're not wearing masks here, so this is kind of an interesting thing to notice. I wanted to again mention Phoenix Children's because they signed the letter before any of the discussion about the concourse. So they made the decision on their own that they thought having gatherings of over 50 people, 25 people, was too dangerous for the good of their hospital. So it wasn't, one before the other. The thing that happened first was they voluntarily signed a letter and sent it to Cara Christ and sent it to mayors and asked us to please postpone large events. So that came first. It wasn't an after the fact, like they're going to get in trouble if they have the concourse now.
I don't think I implied that.
Well, you said that it would look bad for them if they went ahead with the event. But what I'm saying is that they made a decision to write a letter, to put their name on a letter with like 14 others, 2 mayors on December 1st, to say, don't have events. So it's very hard to reconcile that these hospitals are telling us it will save lives to not have events for 2 or 3 months or 1 or 2 months. So I think the reaction to what they're telling us to do is twofold. It's an overreaction in some ways if you think it's closing so much down and going to have such a widespread effect on people to not have one event, because again, it's not affecting everything. I also want to just address, and I don't want to talk about whether lockdowns work and all that stuff, but we were locked down for a while, and it was working. And then when May 15th, when it got opened up again, and then we got into our July when people started really getting sick. So, but compared to now, it wasn't even that bad. I'd just like to mention, I don't want to do these statistics either because everybody's going to figure out a way that they're not right or whatever. But just about the governor's executive order that he did in December, he did put the onus on cities, towns, and counties that if they approve an event of over 50, the jurisdiction must publicly post mitigation measures that the event organizer is required to implement and enforce on their website and submit a copy to ADHS. In addition, the jurisdiction, so that would be us, must dedicate resources to enforcing mitigation measures. So in a nutshell, if we approve events over 50, town staff has to make sure that they check that the plan fully complies with CDC and DHS. We have to publicize it, we have to send it to DHS, and then we have to use town resources to enforce it. So that was something as of like December 2nd, because before that, he had basically said, you can't have those kind of events. And again, we get to the hospital. We get to the hospital discussion, and I understand, when you talk about who dies from it, but what these hospitals are saying is that the hospitals are at capacity. So it affects, like if you have a car accident, or I have knowledge of this happening, that you go to a hospital and they divert you, and that is already happening And the triage, being ready for triage, has that same implication. They decide who to treat. So I think the ICU beds and all beds across Arizona have been over 90% used, and I think as of yesterday, it was like 97% used. The positivity rate that was announced today is 25%, so when you say, oh, there's a lot of cases because there's a lot of testing, but of those getting tested, now 25% are positive. And you remember way back when it was such a big deal to be, you want to be 6% or whatever, and then once you started getting close to 10%, you got a little nervous in August and this is 25%. We had about a week ago, the RT level, which is the one-to-one transmission, was under 1. For Arizona, it's it's over 1 as of yesterday and today. Again, we have 930 Fountain Hills residents. Whether you believe the Department of Health little zip code thing or not, that's how much we had today. Yes, many have died, but again, we don't know the long-term health effects of this disease, which is it can be very devastating. So while a number of people who die might seem small, but it affects. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, our infection rate in this town is somewhere around 3%. 800 people out of 25,000, not including the winter visitors. And I know we don't have as many winter visitors because people couldn't get out and they couldn't come in here. So if we're around 3%, I still think that's one of the lowest in the area. And I don't think, based on the protocols that I saw at the last fair, that we would be in jeopardy of increasing that. And we didn't after the first fair. So I just thought I would mention that our rate is around 3%. I think we've done an outstanding job in this town of mitigating and safety protocols and getting the word out to people. And I think the chamber's played a part of that, but I think the town has too played a big part of that. So
The way that they measure that, though, I appreciate that because I've been trying to figure that out too. What's the percentage? But they always seem to do it on a per 100,000. So several days ago, we were like around 90, which is the California one is 97. Arizona now is at that 128 or whatever, which is like double the national average, a little bit less. So I think, because I really tried to make sure that we're doing apples to apples and all that. So I don't know for sure that being in an 80 range or a 90 range per 100,000 is really that good. It's better than some of the places around us, and that's for sure. One of the things I just wanted to mention too is we talk about events. You had mentioned like vulnerabilities of if we had to postpone this, and you're going to have to bear with me, but I'm going to tell you these events that have been canceled, and then and let you figure out if you think that it matters. We all know that when we approved the fair the first time, we were told Tempe was going to have their fair in December. Well, they had canceled that, and they did cancel that. The Cactus Bowl was canceled. The Fiesta Bowl parade was postponed till April 10th. Barrett-Jackson Auto Auction, which was supposed to be January 16th to 24th, has been postponed to March 22nd. And I'm going to read what he said. The difficult decision to postpone the auction was made out of an abundance of caution to safeguard auction customers, sponsors, guests, and employees from the current spike of coronavirus cases, the worst since the pandemic began, as well as the spike in the number of cases following the upcoming holidays that health authorities are predicting. And he said, and this is Craig Jackson, while every indication showed that our bidders and our sponsors were behind our efforts to hold our auction in January, we decided it would be prudent at this time to safeguard everyone's health. So that's Craig Jackson. The Rock and Roll Arizona Marathon rescheduled from January 21 to January 2022. The Renaissance Festival has been canceled. Phoenix Chinese Week has been canceled. These were all February events. Buckeye Air Fair has been canceled. An Innings Festival, I only don't really know what that is, but I mentioned it because it was supposed to be at Tempe Beach Park, and that's been canceled. That was scheduled for February 27th. The Arizona Festival of Japan is turned into a virtual event. That was on the February 27th. Devour Phoenix, which is a foodie thing at the Desert Botanical Garden, dates to be determined. McDowell Mountain Music Festival, that was supposed to be in March, dates to be determined. Chandler Ostrich Festival was supposed to be earlier. It looks like to be rescheduled in March. Western Week and Arizona Indian Festival is rescheduled from February in Scottsdale to April 15th to 18th, and the Pat Tillman Run is going to be virtual on April 24th. The city of Scottsdale is doing all their safety protocols, expected to remain in place well into 2021. All of their city meetings and all are virtual. Perry's Valley has been meeting virtually since March. Tempe has suspended all events except virtual until further notice due to the state's 3 benchmarks moving into the red status. Only drive-in or virtual events will be considered and approved by the special events team until further notice. This is in alignment with the state and CDC recommendations for large events. So this is all of the information that all of us are getting, and that's why this is such a difficult thing to move forward. I appreciate what David said about not being political. It's just hard to pick and choose what you decide to believe and what you decide, and I'll let you go in a second, but I also just want to say that the narrowness of what we are considering, I don't diminish any of the effect that this thing has had on everybody, because it's been horrendous for all of us, for our families, but I don't think that this particular event has that kind of effect that we're talking about. Jerry?
But it could morph into other things. Does anybody know where the magic 25 number came from?
Oh, I don't, but now that you mention it, since the governor has the 50, I think that would probably be something more, that's what he decided, that's what the CDC decided. I don't know where how the hospitals got to the 25.
It has been used in Europe, so I think that's why these doctors and these professionals had chosen that. I think those are strategies that they used in Western Europe.
Well, then I just wanted to ask too, if you go ahead and sign something at 50, so that means like the existing farmers market and the weekly smaller art show on the median and the avenue would probably continue, or right?
I did speak to some folks about that, and I do believe that that threshold they'd probably be able to be under that threshold, and some of these other. Well, we don't permit a lot of these things, so, things are going to happen anyways.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I can just clarify too. So that used to be one big event. It used to be farmers market and arts on the avenue, and then they split to separate days. So it's really almost about half, and actually probably 2/3 of the event is really the arts, and the other third is the food aspect. We don't believe that they'll have more than 50 when their event is going, because they don't have that many people that come all at the same time, and they're open all day.
Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman?
Just to follow up, I've been by that on Thursday a couple of times, and it's a ghost town, and it's because of COVID. At one of them, I saw 3 vendors. People are afraid, and so I don't think that's going to affect that at all. I mean, I guess frankly, I'd rather see if they can spread out. I'd rather there were more there, but it'll be way under 50.
Well, that, kind of goes to some of the discussion that happened in the spring and in the summer about the ability to come back in a robust way, and everybody is just craving to do that. Everybody's anxious to do that, and it's just really hard to discount 14 hospitals, albeit a couple of insurance companies, telling you that you will save lives by doing this. Is it okay with you if I go with asking Liz who's signed in and that kind of thing? And then if there are anybody with their hands up in the Zoom. Yeah, just the names and then their positions, the way we talked about it. And then if you want to do the hands after that, would that be okay?
Okay, I did, just for the council's information, you'll see I made one packet that included all of the documents behind it. I basically ran out of time and wasn't getting the cooperation of the copier to get the others done, but I can send those to you electronically so that you can see what they say.
And we'll reiterate that this is all part of the public record.
Right. So, the first stack, I don't know why he...
Hand raised.
The first stack was for those that were staying no to prohibiting the special events. So in other words, they supported continuing with the special events. Pam Aguila, Daniel Birch, Judy Conrad, Ketty Fossenkemper, John Kavanaugh, Christine McGinn, Tony Pierce, Paz Winstein, Jindy Buck, Sophie Christian.
I'm sorry, Liz, could I interrupt? Sorry. I just want to know the utility of doing this, because we have hundreds of names. What's the reason for naming everybody?
This is because they requested that they were heard here, and so we're saying the names of the people that were in favor of, the fair going forward and those who weren't, so that it's part of the public record and that they were recognized. Thank you.
Deanna Mumfree, Jennifer Ernst, Douglas Falk, Jennifer Jankovic, Raymond Velasquez, Janet Leroy, Harry Friedman, Dee Dee Samos, Alan Lori Weaver, Lynn Alchin, Kay and Carrie Rasmussen, Mike Dyer, Amy Wolf, Peggy Sung, Sarah Defer, Paul Ewell, Stephen McCransky, Teresa Turner, Randy and Terry Romanen, Molly Wilson, Perry, Jane Jones, Stephen McCullough, Adam Rubenstein, Chris Heed, Sarah Foster, Daniel Coulin, Tom and Susan Mason, Don Olson, John and Denise Person, Charles Sherman, Tara Lamar, Daniel and Deborah Fenn, Bonnie Revel, Vivian Buffa, Jeff Wesley, Michelle Hayden, Sally Jane Schmoll, Dana Spanierman, Richard Rutkowski, Cheryl Shewak, Nazlama Artworks, Dina Galassini, Rick Murphy, John Redmond, Don Mosley, Nancy Russell Plensner, Beverly Tall, Hector Perez Velasquez, Eddie Crutcher, Leanna Colbert, Cassie Crutcher, Peter Volney, Karen Goodwin, Jeff and Jimmy Taylor, Carolyn Henderson, Rochelle Albrecht, Jerry and Jenna Andrews, Andrew Day, Willie Beers, Anna Baum, Carol Osborne, Sonia Pacheco, Connie Little, Brian Billow, Ted Milk, Jennifer Defoe, Jody Mullen, Lori Hanson, Rick Fitch, Lynn Breesley, James Gassell, Tina Garner, Deborah Brawley, Celia Sislo, Cheyenne Roos, Jeff Seemeyer, Susan Tate, Seep Bunecker, Tracy Foltz, Brittany Hansen, Peter Z., Jessica Robertson, Sue Kraus, Dan Hornsby, Karen K. Fry, Patrick Tutt, H. Victoria Mounts, Tammy Bell, Bo James, Ray Dossie, Helena Benedetto, Tammy Commodi, Ann Tanko, Geraldine Dixon, Greta Carlson, David Crawford, Haley, Marianne Hamill, Judith Keenan, Tonya Hunter, Vicki Dirksen, Laura Allman, Paige Lawrenson, Becky Kaiser, Tracy Rule, Camille Andrews, Daniel I should know how to say this, Kovacevic, Rode Warrenberg, and Laurel Grisbach, for a total of 125 that submitted cards before 3 o'clock this afternoon. And of those, 95 were non-residents, including vendors and artists.
Thank you. So 95 of these particular 125 who were in favor of the fair were non-resident or vendors or artists. Thank you.
Okay. And then we had a total of 52 who supported the prohibition of the special events. And of those 52, all but 2 of them are residents. Catherine Gilbert, Kathleen Butler, Diane Price, Cindy Kochier, Crystal Ebinga. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your names right. Sharon Groves, Eric Landau, Ann Hayes, Billy John King, Ukiah Odom, Chris Clemens, Dave Long, Sharon Ehrlich, Fred James, Nancy Gibson, Amy Arnold, Al Ronca, Scott Husky, Clifford King, Hillary Quinton, Nita, Sherry James, Jessamine Clark, Marion Wilson, Sue Kelly, Joan and David Dunham, David Clark, Peggy Yergain, Evelyn Sonnenschein, Kelly Follett, Robert Hirsch, Don Scott, Cheryl Graham, Chris Bresler, Christy Baxter, Naomi Matuso, Cynthia Lewis, Stuart Wecker, Robert Shields, Petrina Peneskabine, Peggy Roberts, Lisa Miller, Kathy Florence, Paul Coleman, Amy Burnett, Dan Davison, Debbie Duckrow, Debbie Clayson, Judith Becker, John McNeil, Tess Stevens.
Thank you. So 52 and all but 2 were residents in favor.
Yes.
And as far as this next list, these are folks who thought we were doing more than this. So I think we'll they'll be in the public record, whatever. But what's the word I meant to say? Anyway, they will be there, but and what they wrote is, but they were under the impression we were closing restaurants and things like that, so they were against that. So there were 78 of those folks. Thank you. So do you want to see if anybody wants to speak on Zoom?
We have a first request from Betsy Lavoie.
Thank you. Sure.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Hi, Betsy. Yep.
Hi, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to share this evening. Good evening to the Mayor, Vice Mayor, Town Council, Town staff. I share as a voice of the business community and the nonprofit community here in Fountain Hills as the CEO and President of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. I'm not able to address many of the comments that were made because of our time restriction, but I do want to point out that many of the events that Mayor Dickey mentioned that postponed were indoor events, which I believe is very different than outdoor events. The public health and safety of our residents here in Fountain Hills is crucial, of course. And as a resident of Fountain Hills since 1979, I have generations of family and friends here in town, including an aging parent, an immunocompromised child, and a special needs family member. We are keenly aware of taking public health and safety measures in our homes, in our businesses, and with our events. We have taken 7 polls and surveys to monitor the business health of our community and provide the much needed resources and information throughout the past 9 months. We have real data regarding the health of our business and nonprofit community. Also important is the health of our local economy. Also important is the health of our business community, and also important is the health of our nonprofit community, many of which are quite literally holding on by a thread as we wade through the lack of events, as we wade through reduced capacity, and as we wade through reduced income in order to thrive. As Vice Mayor mentioned, I did call the Arizona Department of Health contact tracing team and the Maricopa County Health contact tracing teams, and not a single case was reported as being linked to our Fountain Festival of Fine Arts and Crafts in November. This event was done with every safety precaution plus more that was suggested by the CDC, the WHO, and the Arizona Department of Health for special events specifically, and it was proven effective. After learning of this information, there have been some who've tried to disqualify contact tracing data, stating their friend's mom had COVID and was never contacted. Disqualifying our government's process for contact tracing based on very little data is not prudent, and in fact, quite dangerous, I believe. Since the pandemic began, I've personally been out in our community, meeting with hundreds of people week in and week out for 9+ months. The rhetoric surrounding contact tracing not being effective in our state is not at all my personal experience from the large quantity of people I've met with over the course of these months. I have heard countless stories of people being contacted by contact tracing teams after receiving a positive result. And as a matter of fact, our very own events and marketing manager, Paige Lawrence's fiance, he contacted COVID months ago and was indeed contacted by the contact tracing team. I only give him as a personal example because I had permission to do so. We conducted a survey today to gather information to bring to you tonight. The survey was sent specifically to the Avenue of the Fountain business owners and managers. The survey had just 2 questions. The first question was, as a business owner or manager along the Avenue of the Fountains, what is your position on holding special events outside, near, or on the Avenue? And for example, we gave the weekly Art on the Avenue, Farmers Market, Bill's Weekly Car Show, and the Fountain Festival of Fine Arts and Crafts. 71% answered they're in favor of special events. That is our community speaking. The second question was, does your business benefit from outdoor events held near the Avenue of the Fountains? 59% of businesses say they receive increased visibility, increased foot traffic, and increased business income directly from having outdoor events. Our Fountain Festival of Fine Arts and Crafts could be the difference of the survival of some local nonprofits, the survival of many artisans who have had their livelihood completely stricken, as well as the survival of many local businesses who rely on special events to bring in the needed patrons to survive the summer months, even without the crisis of the pandemic. These businesses are owned by our local Fountain Hills residents. They are your neighbors and your friends, and they rely on special events to keep their businesses going. I urge you to consider allowing special events to continue if and when all safety protocols are followed and enforced. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy, so much. Next, and please be aware that we are on the 3, oh, no?
That's the only hand I see raised at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, well, anybody have any last comments or questions about anything?
Can we go home?
That's a good question. Can we go home? I really appreciate it. I know this is very difficult for all of us. Nobody takes any pleasure in any of this. Excuse me? Okay. Oh, great. Thank you. We're welcoming your comments.
I'm calling on John Manley. You'll need to unmute your microphone.
Hey, folks, hi, how are you? Mayor?
Thank you. Hi.
Madam Mayor? Town Council? I've been a participant at the Fountain Hills Show since spring of 1993, and it's been a vital staple in my livelihood as a ceramic artist and potter. Not just that, but so many other people, as well as the town of Fountain Hills, that has accrued this reputation of the best art festival in Arizona that people come to from everywhere. And we all feed off each other. There's scores of potters, maybe more than any of us, but we all make money there because everyone goes there. It's a quintessential festival. And I would think at an outdoor event that we saw successfully happen in November, I would say the numbers were down half in attendance and sales, but yet it was enough to keep us surviving. is vital for us to, I would hope, to continue this, as this town has accrued this reputation of having the best art festival and the best well-attended art festival in the state. I just understand exactly what is going on and how dangerous this is, and by no means would I ever publicize anyone to come to this festival, which, if you have underlying health conditions, if you're elderly, if you have any problems, just don't come. Don't go. But we can pull this off. The town can make money. There's tons of revenue that can be made. And above and all, you know, I'm relying on you guys and your town council to come down with the right decision. I would like to say hello to Alan. Alan, you know me from being an artist next to you at other festivals. I recall the first time I met you, you had your leg in a predicament after you went through an injury. And I know that you don't rely on art festivals to make a living. However, you participate in them. And, well, a lot of us need this other than pandering for government positions. We need to make a living as artists to sell our artwork and not just pay top dollar to have our digital photographs set out there to get political votes. And I'm surprised to see you on the town council. And I would be surprised if any influence is imposed on your say and not wanting to do this, because I've seen your jealousy with real artists.
Thank you.
And
I think we're done, please. Any other comments from anybody? I couldn't hear. I know, I couldn't understand. I couldn't underhear. Are there any? Yes, Councilman?
Yeah, I think I want to thank you for your comments. Did you say something about my jealousy of other artists? I think that's what I heard. I don't know where that comes from. I've done hundreds of art shows. I'm not jealous of anybody. In fact, I support the other artists. But I do want to say this. It's a very hard decision for me. It may sound like it isn't. It's very difficult. I have friends who are artists and who are hanging on. I am totally sensitive to the problems that people have. I wish there was something we could do. But I have to put what I think is the health of the community ahead of anything else. And that's what I'm sworn to do. So anyway, I think I want to thank you for your comments.
Maybe not. Any other comments? Councilwoman?
Actually, just one quick comment. As a newbie to this group of people who has sat out there and watched you guys, well, many of you for years now, I'm gonna have to say, I can tell everybody here is passionate and we all love this town. And this is really important to all of us. So don't think any of us are taking it lightly. I can sense a difference in the way each one of us is speaking and the heart that we feel behind this. And no, this is tough on all of us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other comments? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm having technical difficulties here, but Bo has shared with me. Kim Patak, I believe, wanted to speak.
Thank you. Kim, are you there?
You need to unmute your microphone.
Kim, are you there?
I've lost it.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
There we go.
Yes. Mayor Dickey and council, thank you. My business has been shut down 100% since February, for almost a year now. And, you know, this is something we have to make sacrifices. This is a serious issue. And, you know, my parents and many of our parents fought in World War II and made horrendous sacrifices to get through that crisis. And we're in a pandemic right now where thousands, tens of thousands of people have died. You can't say the deaths are minimal. You know, there are people that are dying in our neighborhoods, in our communities. There are young people, there are middle-aged people, there are elderly people. It's not just people 75 and older that we can write off. And if we're going to ever get this pandemic under control, it's going to take much more sacrifice and discipline that has been exercised to this point. The numbers that Fountain Hills has seen increased since the art fair in the fall cannot be denied. It is not some mysterious coincidence. It is obviously a result of the fair. There was no sufficient contact tracing that has been done to claim that it was not a result of the fair. There was no way you can contact trace people coming and going, as Alan mentioned. So the numbers do not lie. There was a huge increase in numbers in Fountain Hills. So we have a choice to either put money over lives or lives over money. And that is the priority decision that we all must make as human beings and as elected officials. I trust and I put the onus on the integrity and the obligation of elected officials to put the well-being of the citizens that they represent as number one priority, as over temporary and immediate monetary gain. We have to look to the long game of the integrity of the town and the prosperity of the town in the long term and not the short term. We can sacrifice an art fair that's coming down the road in a month when we are looking at a positivity rate of 25% right now. We cannot hold events that could increase the number of cases in our community. We must consider the health and well-being in a much more serious manner than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any other speakers?
Bo. That's all.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
all the name is.
Oh, Bo?
I'd like to say that I support continuing the art fair, so I am against the thought of canceling it. I think those who want to come know what the risk is, and if you are concerned about the risk, you stay away. I stayed away from the last art fair, and I will probably, unfortunately, have to stay away from this one because I am concerned about the risk, particularly for my wife. But I support continuation of the arts fair. And I say this having family members who have had the COVID. My brother has, and his wife both have it, and both of their sons who live on opposite coasts have all had the COVID, as have had their wives, one of whom is pregnant. And they have recovered with no significant problems yet. But despite knowing that my family members have had it, I still support continuing the art fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo, and I hope everyone recovers well. Any others?
No.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments here? I'd like council discussion and direction to the town manager. Anything there? Can I get a, yes, sir?
Just a point of clarification. So where do we stand here? Because as soon as this meeting ends, you know, the minute we go home, we're going to have another 100 emails. So where does this stand, or where do you see, Mayor, you making a decision about the fair? I would also like a decision on the senior softball event that's supposed to take place also the possibility of reopening the community center, and also opening the council chambers for the public. So what do you see as the time that you're going to make this decision? Because we're not voting on it, correct?
No. The whole purpose, again, was because I had information that I wanted to share and get your input on. So that's what we just did. And I'll talk to others and I'll talk to staff. And, it'll be a priority for me to go forward with these items. Any other discussion or direction to town manager? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.